How's it going, everyone? I'm Matt from Universal Audio, and today we're going to be taking a look at the PolyMAX synthesizer. PolyMAX is all about blending the old with the new. It takes the immediate workflow and larger-than-life sound of classic polysynths like Profits, Oberheims, and Jupiters, and combines it with a clean modern interface and convenient features to give you a versatile instrument that's perfect for everything from retro sounds to cutting-edge pop. Its knob per function layout means no menu diving, and even traditionally complex modulations like hard sync and FM can be set up in seconds thanks to the convenient routing options. Top all of this off with inspiring UA quality effects and an easy-to-use preset browser with tons of record-ready sounds, and you've got a modern classic of a synth that's ready to drop into any project. We're going to start by checking out a few of the factory presets to learn how everything works, then we'll put it all together by building our own preset from scratch. Let's check it out. To start, I have a few presets added to my favorites, so I'm going to go ahead and open up the preset browser and pull up the favorites so I can access those. And let's check out the first preset. So this preset is a perfect example of how PolyMAX can take these classic analog sounds and bring them into the modern age. Now, just like the classic polysynths that we modeled PolyMAX off of, a lot of the character comes from the filter, so let's check out those controls first. So in the filter section, we have this large yellow knob in the center, which is the most important control for the filter. It's the cutoff frequency. Now in this patch, the cutoff frequency is being modulated by the envelope, which we can see with the envelope knob here. That's what's giving us those filter sweeps every time we hit a note. Let's turn off the envelope modulation, hear what that sounds like, and then I'll turn it back up so you can hear the effect. So just like we can modulate the cutoff with the envelope, we can also modulate it with the LFO. And there's also the other standard filter controls you might expect, like key tracking, mode, and resonance. Now in this patch in particular, the resonance adds a nice peak and really accentuates the sweep of the filter. So let's take a listen to what it sounds like with and without that resonance. Now the last control to talk about here in the filter section is this 2-pole and 4-pole switch, which sets the slope of the filter. At 4-pole, you get a much steeper slope and it gives you that Moog type sound. And at 2-pole, it's a little more gentle slope and gives you a more open Oberheim type sound. So the last thing I want to take a look at in this patch is voice panning, which is inspired by classic Oberheims. Voice panning grabs each note that you play and randomly pans them left or right, and there's a few different settings that control how far they're panned. Let's take a listen to those settings. So now let's move on and check out the next preset in our favorites list. This patch has some really cool movement, and that's happening in the oscillator section. So let's take a closer look at those controls. So PolyMAX has two analog modeled oscillators that have all the standard wave shapes that you might expect, like triangle, saw, and square, but you can also blend between those to get the in-between shapes as well. So just like how we modulated the cutoff frequency of the filter, we can also modulate the wave shape of both oscillators using either the envelope or the LFO. And in this patch, we're modulating the wave shape of both oscillators using the LFO, which gives us some nice subtle movement. Let's hear what that sounds like before and after. Now also in the oscillator section, we have a mixer, which lets you set the level of either oscillator, as well as a dedicated noise oscillator that can be set to either pink noise or white noise. And there's also the standard tuning controls you would expect to see, like coarse and fine tuning. On this patch, you'll notice that the fine tuning is spread a little bit, which is a really common technique on analog synthesizers to give you a wider and bigger sound. Now at the bottom of the oscillator section, we have an FM knob that lets you add frequency modulation from oscillator 2 to oscillator 1. And there's also a sync knob which lets you add a variable amount of hard sync to oscillator 2. Now, just like all the other important controls in PolyMAX, we can modulate these with either the envelope or the LFO. And there's also a pitch mod knob, which lets you add pitch modulation to both oscillators at the same time. All right, now let's move on and check out one more preset from our favorites list. Now, one of the controls we haven't talked about yet is the wheels section in the bottom left corner. And this lets you set what the mod wheel on your controller affects in PolyMAX. Now there's two options: vibrato, which lets you control the amount of pitch modulation from the LFO to both oscillators, and cutoff, which lets you control the cutoff frequency of the filter. In this case, it's set to cutoff, and the patch is sounding a little subdued, so let's raise the cutoff frequency using the mod wheel on our controller. Now continuing on in this bottom row, we're going to skip over the Arpeggiator section for now, and let's take a look at the two effect slots. Now first we have the Modulation Effects slot, which lets you add things like phaser, flanger, and chorus. And on this patch we have the chorus turned on, which gives us a nice wide sound. I'm going to play the example again and cycle through some of the other modulation effects so you can hear what they sound like as well. So the phaser and flanger effects can be really cool for adding some extra movement to the patches. In this case though, the preset designers got it right and the chorus sounds really good. Now to the right, we have the space effects slot, which lets you choose between two different types of reverb or a delay. Let's hear what those sound like. So the last section we haven't talked about yet is the Arpeggiator. So let's turn that on and hear what it sounds like. Now I really like the way the Arpeggiator sounds on this patch, and you'll notice it's playing a random pattern, which is because we have it set to the random setting. But there's a few other settings we can access with the mode knob down here. There's also a rate knob, which controls how fast the Arpeggiator is playing, as well as an octave range switch. So now that I have the Arpeggiator going, I want to turn this patch into a more plucky, staccato type sound. So let's play with the timing of the envelopes to wrangle it in a little bit. One of the things I really like about PolyMAX is that you can easily make either the envelopes velocity sensitive using the velocity sliders. And what's really cool about this is the Arpeggiator is velocity sensitive too. So if you turn up those sliders, the Arpeggiator will respond to velocity as well, giving you a more dynamic performance. Let's hear what that sounds like. Alright, so now we've taken a look at all the different sections in PolyMAX. Let's put it all together by building our own preset from scratch. So I have the default patch loaded up here, and this is going to be a bass patch. The first thing I'm going to do is set it to mono and turn off the voice panning. Next, I'll change the wave shape of both the oscillators to a triangle wave to give us less of those buzzy upper harmonics and more solid bass tone. Now let's make this sound a little pluckier by turning down the cutoff frequency of the filter and turning up the envelope modulation, and then tightening up the envelope a little bit. Too tight. So now the sound's a little pluckier. Let's add even more articulation by modulating the wave shape with the same envelope. So I'll set the modulation source for both oscillators to envelope, And then I'll turn up the mod knob a little bit. Now a really cool trick that I like for these type of plucky bass patches is to enable unison but leave it set to 0, which adds a really cool pluck string type effect. So we're getting pretty close, but now I want to beef up the sound by adding the second oscillator in. And in PolyMAX, the second oscillator is conveniently already pitched an octave down, so it's perfect for this. So let's come into the mixer here and turn up the oscillator 2 knob. Much beefier. So this patch is pretty close to done, but let's finish it off by spicing it up with some effects. An effect I really like on synth bass is to use the hall reverb with the decay turned all the way down to create some nice space around the synth. Let's hear what that sounds like. Now when used sparingly, this is a really cool effect for intros and bridges, so I'll add some automation here so we only hear the effect on the intro part of my song. Now this patch sounds really good as it is. I have a lot of filter modulation happening, so it gives us a really bright harmonic sound. If you wanted to though, you could also dial that back a little bit to give you a more modern, subdued type of sound as well. So now our patch is ready, and let's take a listen to it in this song that I made 100% out of PolyMAX. So as we've seen here, behind PolyMAX's clean interface is a powerful synth that's full of character and ready to tackle any style. PolyMAX has become my go-to synth for when I want something immediate and inspiring without sacrificing sound quality. I know that when I load it up, I'm gonna be able to dial in a record-ready sound quickly that I won't have to replace or spend a bunch of time EQing later. And when combined with Opal as part of UAD Spark, the sound design possibilities are literally endless. Now for more info, check out the product manuals at help.uaudio.com, and don't forget to subscribe to the Universal Audio YouTube channel for more videos like these. I'm Matt from UA, and I'll see you in the next one.